Okay, so this is what we call a normal distribution of your data. So it's a bell-shaped curve, and in the middle is your mean. Okay, then, so here's your mean. Half the data is above your mean and half your data is below your mean. Does that make sense? With an average, half of it is above, half below. This means 1 standard deviation above, 2 standard deviations above, 3 standard deviations above, higher than your mean. This side means 1 standard deviation below, 2 standard deviations below, or 3 standard deviations below your mean. Okay, there is a rule about how much data appears in this. So grab your cheat sheet, we're going to write this down. So draw me a curve. Right in the middle of the curve is your mean. Draw 3 lines above and 3 lines below, kind of where the third line is almost to the end of the bell. Okay, I'm going to write 1 SD above. So right there, you're 1 standard deviation above. 2 standard deviations above. 3 standard deviations above. And then the same thing on the other side, but I'm going to write below. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a very vague example. If I had a class who had a test average of 70 with a standard deviation of 5, what would be this score? So my mean is 70, standard deviation is 5. What would this test number be? 65? And this would be a 75. Then I could say 68% of my students scored between 65 and 75% on their test. Okay. So from this score, so in my case, this was 70, 65, so this is 60, and this was 75, 80. So between 60 and 80% on the test. 95% of my students scored between that. And then 99.7% of my students scored in this interval. Okay, so these 3 numbers, normally you'd have to memorize them, but they're on your sheet, so they have to be on there, or else you're not going to know those ones. Okay, with that being said, if 68% is between that, what is this chunk? This was 68, so what is just this piece? 68, what's that? What am I going to do here? I'm going to cut it in half, right? So just on those sides is 34. Okay, this was 95. So what's 95 divided by 2? 47.5. And then what's this little chunk then? How would I get that? I'd have to do that minus that. Does that make sense to you? So 13.5. Okay, now this was 99.7, so I'm going to cut that in half. So 99.7 divided by 2 is 49.85. Which leaves me with what in that little chunk. So now I'm going to do this, subtract that. So 2.35% of the data is in that zone. Okay, now what did we say here? From the mean, how much is just completely over the mean? From the mean up is how much? 50% is over. 50% is under. So how much do I have in this last zone? I have to take the 50, subtract the 49. So 0.15 is left after that. Do you see how I'm getting all these numbers? I'm just taking the original 3 and then dividing them up into sections. Okay, so let's look at this. So we had a test score of 71 average. So I'm going to put 71 in the middle. The standard deviation was 4.5. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to add 4.5. So 75.5. I'm going to add 4.5. So 80. I'm going to add 4.5. 84.5. So if you scored an 80 on this test, you can say you're 2 standard deviations higher than the average. 71 minus 4.5, 66.5, minus 4.5, 62, minus 4.5, 57.5. So that's the curve. Okay. In this example, the mean is 80. The standard deviation is 3. So can you give me the 3 values above it and the 3 values below it? And you can do this one in your head. Go up 3, 3, 3. Then go down 3, 3, 3. And I have all the faith in the world that you can add that in your head. Okay, here's our questions. What percent of the data is between 77 and 83? So that's my first question. How much of the data is between that? Do you remember the chart? Do you have a number on that one? So that should be 68%. Did we get that from looking? So between 1 below and 1 above. What percent of the data is between 74 and 80? So this is the second question. So I remembered that was the 95. So this is exactly half of that. And we've already written it down. So that should be 47.5. 47.5% of the data is in that interval. What percent of the data is between 74 and 86? So that's the third question. So all the way from that to that. So 2 below to 2 above should be 95. What percent of the data is between 71 and 83? So that's the last question. So this one, you probably won't see just a number. So I'm going to go this, which is the 49.85, plus that, which is the 34. So this is what I'm doing. This zone plus this zone. Do you see it from the graph we made? So some of them you might have to do a little bit of work for. Okay, I'm going to do 2 questions with you and then we'll do the rest tomorrow. Okay, this is the one I'm doing with you on page 9, number 2. Draw both of these and see what you notice. So question, or class A. So 85 is in the middle. Don't draw the second one yet, because I'm going to draw it differently. Okay, so give me some numbers here. This is above So 87.5, 90, 92.5. You see what I did? I went added 2.5, added 2.5. Subtracting should be 82.5, AD, and 77.5. Okay, I'm not going to draw the curve yet. I'm going to just put these numbers down. The mean of this is 85, Class B. The mean is 85. 85 plus 40, or 4.9, is 89.9. So look at what I'm doing. I'm lining it up. It's basically at that 90. Plus 4.9 is 94.8. So do you see what I'm doing? I want these numbers to kind of line up where they should be. That's bigger than that. Plus 4.9 is 99.7. Okay, on to the other side. So 85 minus 4.9, 80.1. Minus 4.9, 75.2. Minus 4.9, 70.3. Okay, so what can we conclude about these two tests, or two different classes? They both had the same average, but this one is what? The test scores are more spread, and here they're more consistent. People are getting closer to the average. Here people are scoring lower and higher, right? More spread out. So this is because of the standard deviation. The lower the standard deviation, the closer you are to the mean. Okay, when you do this one, these have the same standard, but the mean is different. I'll just give you a rough idea of what it will look like. Hold on here. This would kind of be the idea when you're done. They're going to have the exact same shape because they're spread out the same, except for the middles are going to be different. So the middle of this one is 75 and the middle of that one is 85. So the middle is different, but the shapes are the same. Here, our middles were the same, but our shapes were different. Does that make sense?